you're new in town or just new to this whole podcast thing, you're tuning in to Lore by Night, the podcast that discusses all things vampiric with no fear of breaching the Masquerade. In this episode, we continue to unravel the mysteries behind the origins, motives, and cultures of the 13 vampiric clans in the world of darkness. This episode will focus on the followers of Set, now rebranded as the Ministry. Those who refer to themselves as a Setite would brand us Cainites as imposters, beings who are the spawn of a mortal turned monster. They believe that they are the children of a god, Set to be precise, the Egyptian god of the underworld, hence the name, Follower of Set. The name also implies that they see themselves not so much as a clan like you and I, but as a cultic movement. This is both true and false. They wouldn't like to admit it, but it was a second-generation vampire that embraced Set. But the Setites idolize him as their god, not Cain. Setite belief dictates that Set will one day return to rule or consume the world, and devout Setites prepare the way for his resurrection. For centuries, they would remain as an independent sect and practice with great skill the arts of corruption, deceit, and ancient sorcery. Many now act under the guise of the Ministry, still overly obsessed with their lord and saviour, Set. As is the case with a lot of ancient Egyptian history, no one's entirely sure of Set's origin story. It doesn't help that there are 3 main stories that have been forever in circulation regarding Set. The first speaks of Ra, the sun god, ruler of everything. It was Set, alleged warrior of warriors, who would protect and fight for Set when the moon would rise and set. He would battle with the great Serpent of Darkness, a pep, showcasing his prowess in battle and decision-making in tight situations. Logically, this would make him a good candidate for ruler when Ra decided to retire, wouldn't it? Wrong! Ra decided to bestow the rulership to his grandson, Osiris. This would naturally anger Set, unable to complete his place in the great circle of life. His pride wounded, Set decided to enact his revenge. He would have the most luxurious sarcophagus made for deities. Whoever would fit into it would have it as their own. When Osiris went in, Set and 72 assistants nailed him in before throwing and drowning him in the Nile. Isis, his sister wife, used some magic to retrieve and revive Osiris, which did not please Set all that much, who retaliated by chopping Osiris into pieces and scattered him across Egypt. Isis would call upon her magic to put Osiris back together before having a child with him, a Horus the Avenger who would grow and fight Set, losing an eye whilst defeating his uncle. Horus would become the king of the living and Osiris the king of the dead. Set would continue to lurk in the darkness, scaring the shit out of Cain, gathering followers as he went. The second story talks of Set's birth some 7,000 years ago on the shores of the Nile. He would become a mighty warrior and merciless hunter, one that would unite the Upper and Lower Egypts. Whereas the previous story would have presumed Ra senile, this tale has Ra a jealous, fearful ruler, slaughtering his children in paranoia. Set would speak out against this, resulting in his banishment in the scorching deserts. Some would say that he was embraced by Anoia, the gangrel antediluvian who took the form of a sphinx, losing to a game of riddles and embracing him, which is how he learned and mastered his unique take on protein, Serpents, which has the user take the form of reptiles and snakes over mammals like the gangrel would. Others would suggest that he was embraced by a second-generation vampire, which some presume to be Zilia, whilst others insist that he was embraced by Enoch, potentially making him a brother to the likes of Malkav and Salot. Whatever the truth may be, Set would enter the second city, the city the antediluvians called their home after the Great Deluge, where they devoured their sires. Set would leave the second city, either because he feared the other third-generation vampires who would eat him, or was banished by Malkav for eating the heart of Arakel, the Toreador antediluvian, but there was a lot of evidence to deny this latter proposition. In any case, Set would return to Egypt with an army, finding that Osiris had been embraced by a Cainite, whose child would eventually become the Children of Osiris. The brothers would fight, resulting in the death of Osiris and Horus. Isis would interfere with her spell of life magic, piecing her family back together, a macabre dance that would last centuries. Set would then banish himself to the deserts once more, seeking revenge on the children of Osiris and the Amun-Ra, a cult of Isis. The third and final story presumes our Egyptians as gods, claiming the whole Book of Nod a lie. The most devoted Setites swear by this story, and it is one that starts with Horus gaining victory over Set and Ra casting Set into the underworld. There, Set battled the serpent Apep and devoured its heart, which is how Serpentis was created in this story. He would return to the surface, either as a large snake or sticking to the shadows with Obfuscate, mindful of Ra's son, which would now aggravate the vampire more so than the other vampire clans that would be embraced. Set chose 12 disciples to join him, who all fed upon Set's blood. Ra punished them, birthing the 13 vampiric clans, according to the most devout followers of Set. Isn't it interesting to hear such 3 stories of the origins of Set, each one presenting the Setites in a completely different light? One story has him replace Cain, whilst another doesn't really describe him as a god at all. One tale refers to him as an antediluvian, whilst another suggests that Set is actually a Methuselah, embraced by the Gangrel antediluvian. What you choose to believe, however, is entirely down to you. If you were to ask for my opinion, I like to believe that they all exist in one larger plot. But enough about stories to break the ice at parties. Let us discuss what scholars do know about the followers of Set. Where most of the clans would make their mark in Europe, the Setites were the leading high clan in ancient Egypt, being considered a low clan practically everywhere else. They feared the ruling Ventrus and the Malkavians in Rome, encouraging the conflict between Rome and Carthage in a hope that the line of Blue Bloods and Brugi would destroy each other. They didn't. The Ventru won, but would soon lose to the might of Cleopatra's forces, who I'm told was a ghoul to some Hierophant, which is the name given to a ruling Setite Methuselah acting on behalf of the absence of Set. The Setites would eventually branch out, being invited into the new cultural paradise that was the Byzantium by the Toreador Methuselah Michael, who talked with the Hierophant Katahau about a wager of faith. The two set to work, with Constantinople Setites taking the name the Children of Judas. Whilst the Hierophant had the upper hand in the wager, Katahau was killed and the Children of Judas were beginning to spread the idea that Set was a demon in service to Satan and not a dark god. The balls of them to blaspheme a blasphemer. Anyway, this didn't stop the Setites experimenting with religion and faith, as some Setites in the Dark Ages formed their own cult based off of, but distinct from the Cainite hearsay, which describes Jesus Christ as the second Cain. I know, the idea of Jesus Christ himself as a Cainite is interestingly hilarious. The Church of the Black Magdalene is said to have been passed down from Christ to his 13th apostle, Mary Magdalene. Its teachings encouraged the ideas that Christ had absolved original sin and deeds of the body had no impact on salvation. Any act that was done was performed with love and joy, both considered holy. It was aimed for female mortals who were encouraged to act out of free love and sexuality. In the Middle Ages, these were scandalous behaviours for women to think of, let alone perform. Such mannerisms would attract the attention of the church, the leading force in those times. The followers of Set knew that the other Cainites had overextended and overexposed themselves, over-abusing the herd. Although not directly connected, both the Setites and the Toreadors encouraged the formation of the Inquisition. What makes the Setites more sinister in their involvement is that they gave locations to kindred havens, providing resting places for elders before turning them into their day-walking enemies. Why did they do this? It's simple. To enact Set's revenge on the 12 clans. But this does not mean that the Setites weren't safe. They lost many of their own, including the Hierophant's singular grip over the clan. The Setites had become more diverse, more culturally and religiously challenging as the new philosophy took place. The same would happen with the Kine, which reached a head, from the Setites' point of view, when mortals of the Victorian period uncovered Tutankhamun's tomb, resulting in an Egyptian craze in trinkets and decor, both legitimate and fake. The Toreadors loved the Setites during this period. Why wouldn't they? The way of living and religious beliefs of the Setites, once considered a dark art and a sinister threat, was now mere entertainment. There must have been a strange sensation being a Setite of that period. Many were used to squatting in grottos, but were now incredibly fashionable, receiving many requests to come to Elysium with their ghoul crocodiles and serpents. Many elders did not approve of such crass attention, but all of this recognition made the Setites more powerful. They would milk that cow dry, accepting the requests and employing presents to make themselves the center of attention, more so than the Toreador. Their symbols and artifacts would spread like a virus. This additional attention would aid in the many of the cults that would form around the Setites, which were all, of course, encouraged subtly by them, making those worthy of the brace a much simpler process. The followers of Set wears many a mask. Thus, the faith and beliefs of each follower of Set will differ from Cainite to Cainite, just like the more traditional religions you may have been a believer of as Cain. As a result, there are many cults and factions found within the Setite faith, which revolve around turning kindred over to their way of thinking, in addition to the mortals. I know a few of these, which I will bestow upon you. But before I do, the cults and factions I am about to speak of use Egyptian titles. As I am neither Egyptian or Setite, I apologize now for the potential disrespectful butchering of said titles. The Sisterhood of Sekhmet began with a coterie of female Setites who were dissatisfied with the number of male kindred princes in the Camarilla. Donning the mask of Sekhmet, the lioness, goddess of battle, plague, and healing, they preached female empowerment, starting a cult within the Camarilla, recruiting disenchanted mortals and female kindred of other clans. The Cohort of Wetland is said to have been created by warrior Setites to protect the motherland, in this case Egypt, from invaders in servitude to the gods they worship. They have a vendetta against the other clans, in addition to the Society of Leopold, a group of vampire hunters, and all supernaturals that wander the earth, except for mummies. The warrior Setites are said to be descendants of Wepawet, one of Set's child. They are his child in faith, not by blood, as they are not a true bloodline, like the Serpents of the Light are. These Setites practice the path of the warrior and use potence instead of obfuscate. They are not embraced into this discipline, which makes them an example of how training and ideology can change the basic makeup of a clan. As I briefly mentioned them, I feel I should elaborate on the Serpents of the Light, who are essentially the Setite anti-tribute. Unlike the majority of Setites, the Serpents of the Light believe in nodist belief, which is obviously blasphemy to the most orthodox followers of Set. They are committed to combating the antediluvians and believe Set to be among their enemies. They are considered traitors by other Setites. Apart from the ideologies and spiritual beliefs, however, there are no significant differences between the Cobras and their parent clan. They learn the same disciplines and share the same weakness to light. Carry a torch with you the next time you have to speak with a Setite, and should things get messy, shine it in their face. I can guarantee you it will gain the upper hand over them. But returning back to cults and factions, the Children of Loki has Norse ties. Hard to believe, I know, but those Vikings got around, you know. A Viking merchant referred to as Arnulf was embraced by the followers of Set in Alexandria and tried starting a cult around himself. It didn't work, but a child of his revitalized it, calling it the Children of Loki. This cult spreads the mythos of Loki, the destructive trickster, calling upon her powers to spread the chaos and bring about Ragnarok, which is the Viking apocalypse, and far more terrifying than any Cainite belief. As dangerous as this all is, I hear sinister Setites smile upon this behavior. The cult of Typhoon Triskimitis has Greek influences. These cultists interpret Set as Typhoon, the serpent dragon born from Gaia and Tartarus to lay siege to Olympus and strike down the gods. As the Greeks already assigned many Egyptian deities to gods from their own pantheon in order to explain the similarities between them, many of the fresh-embraced Setites have no problems accepting Set as their father, only calling him by another name. It was these Setites that originally expanded into Europe through Alexandria and cut through the Roman Empire. The cult of Toiret turns inwards, exploring sensations of liberation and enlightenment where they can, be it through ancient texts or by uncovering the dark secrets of the corners of the earth. This cult claims that sets Children Toiret as its patron, in addition as viewing her as a goddess of fertility and black magic. Finally, those who would call themselves Children of Damballa claim that it was Damballa Widu, the snake monster representing earth and darkness, and Adia Wedu, the rainbow serpent, granted Set the curse of unlife when Set ate Damballa's heart. Set would spread the curse at its price. The Children of Damballa revere the serpents and Set as a means of embracing madness and ecstatic trance. Through enough spiritual prayer and power, they too will join them as gods, or so they say. Like the Cohort of Wetland, these cultists do not practice obfuscate. Instead, the ministers have auspex. I had been using Setite and follower of Set throughout this discussion, so where has minister come from? That is derived from their newish title, the Ministry. It is a recent name change, or a rebranding, if you would. Those in Africa still identify themselves as the follower of Set or Setite, whilst every other minister refers to themselves as a member of the Ministry. It shows a sign that the clan's understanding of its relationship to its founder has changed. Rather than being Set's followers, they see Set as being within them, making them his living church. Whether this is a good or bad thing is down for you to decide. What is more interesting is their alignment with the sects in the modern Knights. They, for many years, were an independent sect, the oldest of the four. They were once invited to join the Camarilla, you know, but they declined. With the beckoning dragging off elders and the Sabbat fighting the Gehenna Crusade, many of the Setites' havens were compromised. Alongside the Banu Hakim, they sought entrance to the Camarilla, who accepted the Assamites, but not the Ministry, which I find somewhat hysterical. Many Setites are now part of the Anarch movement, arming their twin weapons of temptation and subversion to bring spiritual liberation to all descendants of Cain. Hopefully you have got the idea by now that the Setites are heavily devoted to their origins and many cultish beliefs, things that have lasted for thousands of years. You may be asking, is there anything else that can be said about them? As a matter of fact, yes there is. Besides the spreading their cults and their idealistic faith, their mission in unlife can be summed up with a singular word: corruption. The Ministry seeks to subvert and destroy whatever is good, safe, and beautiful within all societies. They are plotters without peer, with an unequaled genius for misdirection and temptation. Some of their favourite weapons include drugs, sex, money, and power. They are a bunch of slippery snakes, if you allow me to employ the pun. They believe in a radical split between the divine, eternal soul and the corrupt. Their faith states that the soul knows it does not belong in a prison of matter. Anything that distracts the soul from this knowledge and ties it to the world must be a trap. And if the world is a prison, then the gods must be its jailers. To be kept updated, follow the Law by Night VTM Twitter and Instagram pages to find out when we will upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, as you'll be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.